it can definitely put you in a bad spot. Dehydration, it's a bad thing to have in the middle of the jungle. So that's the only close call that we had. We had to airlift somebody for dehydration. That's just because over drinking. But other than that, no, we never had any issues with anybody. We had a guy who actually thought that he can take the hook out of a piranha mouth and lost the tip of his finger.
That was Javier describing a few things you should be on the lookout for your next Ecuador trip. A very doable trip to the jungle today on the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Hey, how's it going today? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. Please head over to Instagram if you've ever been on Instagram or want to check it out, Wet Fly Swing, and share a lightning bolt lightning bolt emoji. Give that a shot if you're out there, and I'll know you listen to this episode. That'd be awesome. Before we get started, let's hear from our sponsor. Koffler Boats specialize in custom-ordered aluminum boats and uses the best materials, components, and accessories available to meet all of your fishing and boating needs. The Jet Drifter, a perfect power boat for shallow water rivers or lakes, will perform with as little as a 35 horsepower prop engine. Head over to wetflyswing.com/Koffler to check out the lineup right now. That's Koffler, Koffler, wetflyswing.com/Koffler. Check out the lineup and connect with Joe. Javier from Ecuador Fly Fishing Tours walks us through the full process and trip today. We find out a little bit about Arapaima, this crazy air-breathing fish, how they created one of the only luxury lodges in the Amazon in this area, and how you can see and fish the Galapagos this year. The Galapagos is definitely is a protected area, but Javier walks us through some steps of digging into that. So it's pretty amazing today. We definitely leave a little on the table, including the full trip to the Galapagos. So stay tuned for that one. But here you go. Javier has the inside track. So without further ado, EcuadorFlyFishingTours.com. How's it going, Javier?
Hey, Dave. How are you? Doing great. Thank you.
Good. Can you pronounce your last name to make sure so we all know we can get that right?
Guevara.
Yeah, Guevara. That's right. No, it's not that hard, I guess. I struggle a little bit sometimes with some of the last names, but we're going to dig into some fly fishing in Ecuador and South America. You've got a bunch of great destination trips lined out, and I want to focus a little bit on Ecuador, maybe even Arapaima. I know that's a huge species that I'm not sure a lot of people have gone for. So. But before we get there, talk about how you first got into fly fishing.
Well, I actually got into fishing when I was a kid. I used to go with my grandpa to the coast of Ecuador, spend almost 3 to 4 months after school ends, and that's how I learned to get into fishing. He was basically my first inspiration in the aspect. And then when I got to the States, when I was 20 years old. I just saw somebody in the park casting fly rod, and that just became an eye-catching piece. And I started investigating how this whole fly fishing world worked. And after that, I just fell in love. And I've been doing it since then. I'm currently 39 years old, so. It's been a long journey doing fly fishing all over South America, actually.
Where were you born, or where did you grow up?
I was born in Quito, Ecuador.
And in Quito, you have, I think you do some trout trips in that area?
Correct. Ecuador has high elevation trout. Usually we fish locations around 10,000, 12,000 feet. Beautiful scenery. Many people from the States have been there. Compare it a lot to Montana. Beautiful landscapes, mountains, snow-capped mountains around, clear water springs. We do not have any huge rainbows like Patagonia, but they're definitely, we've seen trout around up to maybe 8-9 pounds.
Oh, wow. That's a nice trout.
which is a nice trout.
Yeah. I'll take an 8 and 9 pounder any day. That's definitely steelhead size. So
Correct.
okay, well, you're in. So I mean, when people come to you, the Ecuador, you have the website that probably comes up a lot. But when they talk Ecuador, what do they know? Do most people have an idea what they want to fish for? Because I know there's a few species. Maybe you could start there. Just talk about what species there are there, and then what are people mostly coming for.
So most of the time, the people talk about Ecuador, believe that we have like zero fishing. And it's a surprise for them to hear that we have rainbow trout in the mountains. We have Arapaima in the Amazon. And one of the main species that we have a lot of people coming to is striped marlin in the Galapagos Islands. A lot of people thought the Galapagos are protected area. And a lot of people think that you cannot fish in Galapagos. But actually you can. You just need a special license for it. And there's many few boats authorized to do that.
So if we were, if somebody was coming down there, setting up, say they wanted to set up a trip for, let's just keep it into going into Ecuador. We talk about Galapagos as well, but when would be the best time to go there if they, let's focus on Arapaima for a little bit. When would be the best time to go there? Does it matter?
It does. Arapaima needs, for you to be able to fish Arapaima, you need lower water levels. We fish them in lagoons. The best time to go chase Arapaima in Ecuador will be, we have 2 dry seasons. We have a month of August where everything gets super hot and the water levels drop. And then we have the end of December to the end of February. That's basically the summertime in the Amazon. And that time, the water levels drop a few meters, and the Arapaima is concentrated in the lagoons.
In the lagoons, okay. And to get, so if we were looking at, say, mid-January, heading down there, and these lagoons. So what does that take us there? Because the Amazon, most people, not most people, I think of Amazon like crazy, jaguars kind of attacking you and stuff like that. What's the to bring us that? How are people staying safe down there, and what's that look like doing a trip for them?
So normally we arrive in Quito. We spend a night there. We take an hour flight to the jungle, which is a city outside of the jungle that's called El Coca.
How do you spell that?
COCA. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, COCA. Yep.
And that's a 3.5 hour boat ride to the proximities of the lagoon. From there, we change to a smaller canoe because we're going through a wavy small stream through the jungle where there's like all kind of wildlife, birds, and you see all kind of stuff. It's amazing. It's about an hour of that travel, and then we get to our lodge. Our lodge is called Paiche Amazon Lodge. Paiche is the native name for Arapaima. They also call it Pirarucu, but our lodge is called the Paiche Lodge. From there, the lodge is probably a 4-star lodge. Beautiful accommodations, super comfortable, air conditioning, great food. We fish out of smaller, not smaller, they're 25 feet big canoes, wide enough for, you can be jumping on it. It's super stable. They're about, probably about 4.5 feet wide. So they're just big fiberglass canoes. Normally we have 2 guides, one in the front, one in the back. Chasing Arapaima, it's a whole different game. It's not a numbers fish. It's more of an opportunities fish. So I compare Arapaima with hunting. That's exactly what it is. There is no just cast blind. At least where we fish, we don't cast. We try not to cast blind cast. We hunt for the prey basically. So what we do is we sit in the lagoon, We see Arapaima gulping for air. They're air breathers, so they usually come out to take air for about 15 to 20 minutes. Every 15 to 20 minutes, they come out to get air, and we kind of like can pinpoint where they are. So that's when the game starts. We start getting closer and closer. Very, very slow, quiet. Not too much vibration in the boat, no sounds. It's basically like hunting. When you get closer to the area where Arapaima is, we get ready because in the next gulp of air, we try to take a cast. Now we cast in 12-way rods with 100% core fly lines. And 13, 14-inch fly. So it's very hard to cast all day with that. So we take the opportunities that we can. So that's kind of like a way of fishing for Arapaima. A regular day, you can probably have at least 15 to 20 shots to fish, which is a lot. There's not too many places in the world that you can have that many opportunities. A lot of that takes, the angler, when you see the fish the size of the canoe, their knees start shaking, their arms start shaking, they can't control the fly line. It's nerve-wracking. That's what it is.
How big, because this is one of those things, right? The Arapaima, they get huge. Like, how big are we talking about? Like, what would be a big fish to catch up there?
So this fish can get up to, a little bit over 400 pounds. But my personal best, it has been about 275 pounds.
Wow. On a fly rod?
On a fly rod, correct.
And that's the extreme. So 270. And then what would be, there must be some diversity of sizes. I mean, and then what's the smallest, and then what is the average?
So your baby Arapaima, it's about 100 pounds. So when you catch a 100-pound fish, it's like, you're catching a 100-pound tarpon. And that's just a baby.
By the way, you painted, the picture you painted of getting to the spot in the jungle just sounds amazing. You know what I mean? It sounds like the perfect, because you get the jungle, this amazing remote experience, but then you go to this 4-star lodge, which sounds like it's pretty comfortable. But so we'll probably dig into a little more of that. I want to hear about this fish because, an air breathing fish. So, when I think of that seems really strange to me. Why, what's this fish? How many fish out there are breathing air? You don't think of that very often, right? They're usually, most of them are passing it through their gills. So
correct.
Talk about the fish a little bit. I'm not sure if you know all the biology, but tell us, why is this fish air breathing? A little bit about that.
Unfortunately, I'm not too familiar with the biology of the fish. I know it does have lungs like humans, basically. So that's the reason why they need to take air.
So it pretty much has, it's not, well, I'll put in some, I'll try to find a video or something to put in the show notes so we can look at somebody talking about, a little bit of the life history, the biology, because that is really interesting, right? I've never caught a fish with lungs. That sounds amazing right there. And also it sounds cool because I would imagine when you catch one, you're not as worried about hurting it. Obviously hurting it, but it can stay out of the water because it's breathing air. So it's not, you can hold it up and get a picture, right? You don't have to worry about keeping it wet. Correct.
So one of the things that we try to do in the lodge is not to take the Arapaima out of the water. I know there's different lodges around the world. They drag the fish all the way to the shoreline and take a picture. Arapaima is a protected species all around the world. And it's an endangered species also. So we try to take care of it as much as we can. They are giant fish, tough. Their scales are like almost, there's no caimans that can go through them, basically. And there's a lot of caimans in the water.
And what are the caimans?
White caimans, brown caimans.
Oh, these are, I'm not even familiar with these. Is this like just a predator species?
Correct, a caiman. And we try not to take the fish out of the water. Try to let them be there. We take a side shot on the boat. and try to just release it that way.
Okay, and when people are coming to, they're setting up this trip with you. Well, what's the typical? Are we talking about a week, or how long are people on average coming there?
Yeah, so totally it takes about a week for the entire travel. It is an adventure to go to the jungle, to do the airplane, the boat, the little canoe. So it does take a lot of travel and logistics. But yeah, normally it takes about a week. We fish 4 to 5 days, depending on the anglers. With 4 or 5 days of fishing, we can almost ensure you will have a fish.
Yeah. So you'll get a shot.
Yeah, you definitely have a shot. I mean, last year before the pandemic started, I had a guy who went to the lodge. Every day he had probably at least over 20 shots, clear shots. I mean, amazing. And it just, connect with one fish, connected to fish, and just couldn't handle them in the line. I mean, it's like you're connected to a train. And they jump like tarpon, very similar to tarpon. Big head shakes. Their head is pure bone. There's very little place where to put the fly, and just the power of it. I mean, I have fish that have completely dragged the canoe with us pedaling backwards, and has taken it all the way to the mangrove, basically.
Holy cow!
Yeah, we have fish that we had to start the engine and put reverse and try to tow it out of it because we couldn't do it with the pedals anymore.
So let's talk about this. Is kind of crazy. So you mentioned the gear a little bit, but what are you using? So you're using a 12 weight. Give us I'm not sure what rods, reels. I mean, reels obviously an important one because you want to have a good drag. Well, what are you guys using specifically for the gear there? Fly lines, reels, rod.
So I use Loop Crosswater series. I'm sorry. I use Loop Cross W fly rods, 12 weights. For Arapaima. For reels, we use the Opti reel from Loop also. And for fly line, we use Scientific Angler. I believe it's called Big Water. It's a 100-pound core. You have to actually make your own loops. It's a big line. It's a difficult line to cast because it feels like you have a rope in your hand, but it's probably one of those lines that work for this type of fish.
How do you cast? So you got this big thing. Are you guys just trying to get within 20 feet of these things, or what's the long? What's the again average cast? What do people need to be ready for if they're prepared for this?
So your cast is going to be somewhere about 25, 30 feet, and because the fly line is so heavy, you'll be able to chuck the fly all the way to the fish. Now you can do some overhead casting also. But it can be a little complicated.
So you're just doing a little, you're like water loading it behind you and casting it, just flicking it over?
That's correct.
Flicking over a 12-inch. And what would be a fly? Is there a name, something we could see out there online of the name of a fly, these 12, 14-inch flies?
I would say it's a fly similar to a bait fish imitation. Usually black color works great. Or a tan color also. It's going to be, the actual fly is going to be probably about 10 inches. And then we really love these, I believe it's called Pecarini dragon tails or fish tails. They're like fiber tails. And those create a lot of vibration in the water, and these fish key on that. They're slow-moving fish when they're just cruising. They're not just going like any other fish, full speed. They're just going super, super slow. When they see something that passes by them or next to them, they just gulp the water into their mouth and suck the fish in. So sometimes their take can be super gentle, very, very gentle takes. And sometimes it can be, like a train just got hooked at your fly line, basically.
So you see this fish gulp some air, and then to take us there. So you're sitting there, you're set up, you're within 25 feet. This fish gulps. when you cast, are you dropping that fly and sinking it down, or is it kind of, are you stripping it, or what are you doing?
So when the fish comes up, you pretty much have about 2 to 3 seconds to figure out what direction the fish is going, which makes it difficult already there, because you don't really know if it's going left, or it's going right. So you have to decide at the moment. When you notice that the fish is going, let's say, right, you would drop your fly probably about 5-6 feet in front of it. And the strip is going to be basically like you're stripping for trout. I mean, super gentle, really slow. I mean, I'm talking like really slow, inches. And just let the fly suspend. That's why we like those tails, because the tails create the vibration, even if the fly is not moving. And after that, just hold for your life, basically. I mean, these are fish that jump like 10 times, pull, and it's just a long fight.
God. And so because of the super bony mouth, you have to do a really hard strip set?
That's correct. Yeah, you normally have to strip set probably 2 to 3 times at least until you feel the fish it's hooked. And normally when you hook them, they're going to jump. They're going to go crazy. So, yeah, strip setting is probably one of the things. A lot of the anglers are not used to it also. So, we are training our guys to make sure that the once they see the cast, they start telling the client strip set, because you don't know when it's going to happen, but at least gonna try to help them remind to strip set.
And so the guides you mentioned, there's 2 guides are on the boat. So who are these? Talk about the guides a little bit. Are these local guides, or who are the people that are actually doing? How many people are down there?
So being in the jungle, we have to work with native guides. Just because they know the area, they know the ecosystem, they know the animals, they know the birds, they know how things work. Sometimes we had to ask permission to the Pachamama, which is the Mother Earth, to be in their land. So there's sometimes even some rituals that they do. And it's just the respect for nature, basically. So that's another piece that the client takes when they come to us. They see all this respect to the land, basically. But yeah, we use one native guide and a fly fishing or conventional gear guide in the boat in the front, pretty much guiding the whole fishing process.
So you have one native guide, and then you have another person who's there to help guide on more of the gear.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So that's basically somebody's coming from the States that's more guiding on that end with all the gear, has all the gear.
Correct. Yeah, it's somebody that has the knowledge to prepare your line, to prepare your fly line, to prepare to tell you how to cast, where to cast, and things like that.
Yeah, and when you said Pachamama, that reminds me. I had an old friend of mine, Greg Collette. We just did a podcast episode here recently. I'll put a link in the show notes. He's actually down in Ecuador. This is where this kind of got me thinking about this. Then he's doing a whole nother thing. He's like in the villages helping like local people with some like building, schools and stuff like that or whatever, but he got me thinking. I was asking him like, Greg, so what's going on, fishing wise down there? And he couldn't even exactly explain what type of fishing and stuff like that. But yeah, he talked about some of the things that are these amazing things, like the jungle, like just getting through the jungle. I mean, obviously we're talking boats, but it's a major journey. What are some of the, as far as dangers out there? Is there, because that's probably one thing people maybe think about going to Ecuador. It's maybe not the same as going to Costa Rica or something like that. Are there any dangers to be thinking about? How would somebody prepare for this trip?
So I would consider Ecuador a very safe place to go. There's no, like you mentioned, there's really no information about fishing in Ecuador because the culture in Ecuador is not about sport fishing. There's only one city in Ecuador that do a little bit more of that, but there's zero information about it. So the best thing is to get in contact with somebody that knows the area, that knows the location, that knows what they're doing. There's really no dangerous part in the whole journey all the way to the jungle. It's a very enjoyable trip. Um, of course, in the jungle, there's jaguars, there's a little bit of everything, but that's where we have local guides that know the area and know where to see and where to go. I mean, there's huge anacondas also. You see a lot of snakes, but we all prepare with kits to take care of any emergency that we have, and we also recommend everybody to have global rescue for insurance purposes too.
So if something does happen, we could just basically use the satellite phone or whatever and call out and have somebody come in and rescue you essentially, right?
Yes, that's correct. So normally I carry a satellite phone with me all the time. If there's any emergencies, yeah, definitely we can call out. If there's anything that we can take care of in the lodge, we will. But if there's any evacuation that we need to do, then that's what the service is for.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So that's one potential question. So it sounds like it's probably just almost, just as safe as anywhere else you're traveling. There's always going to be some things that can come up, but the path to get there, you mentioned, going into Quito and then going into, grabbing some other planes and then the canoes. What does, just give us, another obstacle might be the cost of a trip. Could somebody just do you guys have whole packages where, you put the whole thing together? Talk about that. If somebody wanted to was interested in doing this, what would they do?
So a normal package for to go fishing in Arapaima in the Amazon, it's roughly about $400 to $4,500. That includes everything, absolutely everything. The moment you arrive to the Quito airport, we pick you up in the airport. We take you to a really nice hotel nearby. The dinners, the transportation back to the airport, internal flight. Everything is included in the package. Lodging, food, guide, boat. The only thing that we do not include in the packages is fishing equipment. If somebody needs fishing equipment, we're happy to provide for them, but that's not something that we include.
Gotcha. So you have to either pay for it, or are you bringing it down from the state with you, or is it something you pay for there?
We have equipment and with us in the lodge. The only problem is the Arapaima can't trash your fishing equipment, so we will have to go through that like in the season.
So basically, you buy your stuff because these fish might pretty much just destroy it, and you might have to. That might be the end of it, and so that's cool. I mean, this would be a good set for, these rod and reel companies, right? Go down there and see if they can take this fish, because this fish maybe does more abuse. I mean, I guess you could look at marlin out in the ocean and that sort of thing. I mean, which fish abuses the equipment more, catching a marlin or catching a arapaima?
They're different fish, definitely. Marlin is about speed. Arapaima is all power. I mean, once you connect to this fish, you feel so much power in your line. I mean, your line is vibrating. Your rod is like about to explode. It's insane. It's something like fishing Arapaima. It's 10 times more powerful than fishing a big marlin, because you are connected straight to their mouth. I mean, it's marlin fishing. You have about 300, 400 yards of line out, so you're not really fighting so much a fish. You're fighting the current. You're fighting the marlin. But here, when you have a fish that's about 50, 60 feet away, you're directly connected to it, and it's a 250-pound fish.
And are you guys doing I know I had Jake Jordan on, and he was talking about fighting those big, fish out, the blue water fish and things like that. And he talked about holding the rod, basically pointing it straight at the fish. Is that how you're landing these fish? Is it just a direct, you're just keeping them on, and just pointing it at the fish and just dragging them in?
Yeah, so being such a big fish, you definitely have to point it at the fish. We do put a little bend on it just to take the head shakes abuse in a way. But fishing for a big fish like this it's a different game. You have to be ready. You have to be pointing at the fish. Your back has to be relaxed. Otherwise, next hour you're gonna be in pain. But we do put a little flex on the rod also. So
let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Koffler Boats specialize in custom-ordered aluminum boats and uses the best materials, components, and accessories available to meet all of your fishing and boating needs. The Jet Drifter, a perfect power boat for shallow water rivers or lakes, will perform with as little as a 35 horsepower prop engine, but the whole design will also accept larger engines. In addition, the Jet Drifter is also designed to be rowed. The Jet Drifter can be custom built in 14-foot through 18-foot lengths, and I've been rowing Koffler drift boats for most of my life. I remember going down the river in my dad's Koffler boat when I was a kid, and since I have transitioned into the 17 by 54 drift boat, perfect for packing a ton of gear and still staying nimble. If you need a bulletproof boat that can literally sit outside all year long when not in use and take a beating, Koffler has the boat for you. Whether a Jet Drifter, drift boat, Rocky Mountain trout boat, or sled, Koffler has you covered. Head over to wetflyswing.com/Koffler to connect with Joe and the family today. That's Koffler, Koffler, right now. wetflyswing.com/Koffler. You support our podcast by clicking over through that link to connect with Joe. Please let Joe know you heard of the ad through the podcast when you connect, and check back with me to celebrate if you end up making a purchase. Okay, now back to the show. I mean, you're painting a pretty cool picture. I mean, the fact that, $4,500, like you said, is all inclusive. I mean, that definitely is a very good rate compared to a lot of other lodges. Trips you can do, you can spend a lot more than that. So that's in the journey. I mean, it sounds like this trip is more for that person who wants a little bit of an adventure, right? Going through the jungle, which is something I think would be amazing. Anything else? We talked about this. Again, it sounds like it's pretty straightforward as far as what you need to do. Have we missed any steps along the way? Do you want to give a heads up on anything else? Somebody, again, right now, say they want to plan this trip. Anything else to be thinking about?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, the price is very, very affordable compared to any other lodges. Most of the lodges that do Arapaima, they're somewhere in $7,000 to $8,000 for about the same time. Another fish that you have opportunity to catch here is the arowana. The arowana, it's very similar to fish like you're fishing for baby tarpon.
Oh, yeah. How do you spell that one?
Arowana. Well, there's many different ways to spell it. It all depends on the country.
As far as we go to look it up on Google right now, most people listening to this are probably somewhere in the Western United States or somewhere around the U.S. So,
yeah, so that's another amazing looking fish to catch. If you go to our website, you can definitely see them there. There's a few pictures of them. It's a fish that keys more into insects. So it will be under the trees, next to branches that are sticking out of the water. A lot of dragonflies and grasshoppers and all kind of big flies will be sitting into these sticks sticking out of the water or on the branches. And sometimes you'll see these Arapaima coming out of the water, almost hitting the branch and grabbing the flies. So they're amazing looking fish because those fish, you can definitely catch them with a 6-7 weight rod. So that's the way that we kind of like take care of the arm a little bit and break the pressure through the day. Because when you're fishing for Arapaima, you're concentrated 100%. And then you need to break that a little bit into, let's catch some fish. So we go catch some Arapaima in the meantime, and then we will go back to fishing arowana for some time. And then we catch Arapaima again, and we go for arowana again. And they're super cool fish because they jump. They take dry flies, big dry flies, poppers.
There you go. So you're painting even a better picture now. So while we're out there, not only the Arapaima, but we got this other species you can catch kind of right in the same areas, in the same water while you're out. You just switch rods, or are you going to a different area?
Yeah, we switch rods, same area, probably different part of the lagoon, definitely. The Arapaima eats arowana, so they're not close to each other. They try not to. And also you can get pacu, which is similar to a big piranha, let's say. And those eat fruits. So there's some trees that have these smaller fruits, kind of like a 1-inch ball. Usually tend to be green or yellow. And they key into the sound of the water. When these fruits drop in the water, they create this bloop, and these fish can't see that well, but they hear that and they just go for it. So we have some fruit flies also in the boat, as well, like big dry flies like big grasshoppers, and of course the big Arapaima flies.
Okay, so now we got a few species, and does that kind of cover? This is great. It's and then these pacu are kind of, same sort of thing. Are you getting a little more action with them, similar to the arowana?
I would say it's a little bit less, but you can definitely catch them in the right time.
So when you're at the lodge, so you get there, I guess going back to get there, so you fly in, I guess you get there sometime in the day. You settle down, get settled in. Are you getting up the next morning, first light, and heading out? And then talk about what you're targeted which ones during the day.
We try to target Arapaima somewhere around probably at 7 a.m. We don't really go first light. There's not much action coming up in that moment. So we eat breakfast, we take our time, and then we go fishing somewhere about 7 a.m. From there, we fish to 12:30. The weather gets pretty hot in that time. The Arapaima is not really too active with the heat because they like the cooler water, so they dive deep. And then we take about 2 to 3 hour lunch and some time to rest. And then we go out somewhere about 3:30 again to about 5 or 6 p.m., depending on light conditions. So we try to maximize the time where the Arapaima is active instead of just being cooking under the sun.
And how hot is it? Like, how do you stay comfortable out there?
So normally the weather in the jungle can be in the 90s to 100, 110 degrees. Now we're talking about 100% humidity. So, you breathe and you sweat. So that's what we need to keep hydrated. We need to come back to the lodge to cool off for a little bit, to take some rest. But yeah, it can be pretty demanding. And as you mentioned, this is a trip for adventurous minded anglers, definitely.
Yeah, you're not going to have anybody out there that's super. If you're out of shape, if you're not in good health, you don't want to be doing this trip. This is something to be ready, and you're not really jumping in the water to cool off, right?
Well, you can. We talk about pacu, arowana, arapaima. There's definitely piranhas there. There's some big catfish, red-tailed catfish. There's all kinds of species. We're talking about the Amazon jungle, so there's stuff that we haven't even heard about before. So there's a lot of fish. There's a lot of things. There's electric eels. So there's some dangers in the water, but usually it tends to be pretty safe. We do get in the water here and there. We almost had an Arapaima one time actually flipping the boat with their tail. It's like somebody's dropping a bomb in the water and the canoe almost lifted completely because it tailed the canoe from the bottom.
That is crazy. So people there are clients, that do get in the water. It's not, you're not necessarily, I'm just thinking it would be fun to get in, just to kind of cool off. But there's also, don't you have, you got some other diseases to think about too, right? Like dengue fever. There's all sorts of kind of that. Is that something to be worried about, any of that stuff?
No, that's something that you don't really worry much. We definitely recommend all the clients that are coming to the jungle to get vaccinated with, yellow fever, typhoid, and basic things. Most of the anglers that come to the jungle is people that have already been somewhere else, like Brazil, maybe Colombia, and they're very familiar with that process. But it is I would say highly recommended to get vaccinated just in case, because you're in a very remote area, many hours away from civilization, and it's just better to be safe.
Yeah, vaccine. And do you guys do so? As far as the program, you've got Ecuador Fly Fishing Tours.com. I mean, is this affiliated? Are you connected to any of the travel, like the yellow dogs or any of that stuff, or is this kind of all on your own?
No, this was a project of a solo project. It's a one-man show. So everything you see, everything, even the photographs, most of the photographs are mine, just because I love photography. So I usually carry all kinds of equipment with me. But yeah, this is only us, only me.
Cool. I love that. I mean, I think that, from what I'm doing, essentially it's kind of a similar thing we've been building here with the podcast. It's, we really haven't been affiliated with, any of those programs. And I think they're great. I mean, they do their own thing, but I love hearing the stories of the people like yourself doing it. You know what I mean? Like you're building this thing on your own. And that sounds pretty amazing. So hopefully we can help you out here and maybe send some more people your way. I think anybody listening like myself is probably getting excited about this because it sounds like a pretty amazing adventure. Do you have a story, anything that comes to mind you want to share about a trip? I'm not sure how often you're doing these trips, but I mean, there must be some crazy adventures that have happened. Anything over the years?
Well, there's a lot of things that happen, especially in the jungle.
Has anybody been close to dying over the years? Have you had any story like what's the closest that you've come to that?
At least not in Ecuador. We had people airlifted because they were drinking too much, and the heat can definitely take it can definitely put you in a bad spot. Dehydration, it's a bad thing to have in the middle of the jungle. So that's the only close call that we had. We had to airlift somebody for dehydration. That's just because over drinking. But other than that, no, we never had any issues with anybody. We had a guy who actually thought that he can take the hook out of a piranha mouth and lost the tip of his finger because he didn't want to use the pliers. But that's about it.
He must have been drinking as well.
Actually, no, he wasn't. That's the interesting part. So
maybe this isn't the place. Yeah, I mean, alcohol. Maybe leave the alcohol for another trip. This is more focus on staying hydrated, staying safe, and stuff like that.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, we do have beer and some soft drinks and alcohol drinks in the lodge available. We always try to tell the clients not to overdo it. Have a good time, enjoy the jungle. I mean, it's one of those one of a lifetime experiences to be there, and we try not to. We try to make sure that they don't pass a bad time while there.
And it sounds like you have, this lodge. So, obviously you set this up on your own. Was that, how many years has that been going to get to a point where you've got a 4-star lodge? I would think there's a lot of logistical things that, taking it just beer, right? Taking in beer and things like that and having electricity. Yeah,
so everything is due to generators for electricity. We have hot water that's warmed by the sun. So this is a lodge that was created to help the indigenous community from the area. Now, fishing for Arapaima, Arapaima for in Ecuador, it's prohibited in national parks. You cannot just grab somebody and go into the national parks, especially the Yasuni National Park, and fish for Arapaima.
Are we fishing? Would we be fishing in the national park, or is this different?
We are on the shorelines outside of the national park.
And what's the name of that park? Can you spell that one as well?
Yasuni. It's YASUNI.
So a national park is really another great thing down there, right? Because you've got protections for probably some of these species.
Yeah, so in the national park, you can fish for smaller peacock bass, the same species that you find in Florida. They don't grow big. They're usually about 2 to 3 pounds. There's a ton of Arapaima and all kind of fish, but you cannot fish for them in national parks. If Ecuador finds you fishing for Paima in any of these areas, you can go up to, as a minimum, 1 year to jail. So that's why we partner with this indigenous community outside of the national park. They're the guardians of the lagoon, and they're one of the few, if no only, communities there. They understand that tourism, fishing tourism, it's a way of not doing damage to nature and trying to take care of their communities also. So,
yeah, that's what I mentioned. My friend Greg, we had talked about that. He's very intertwined with the local community there as well, and yeah, I thought that was a really cool thing. I think there's also, we mentioned the indie fly. Give that a shout out as well. I think Oliver White is doing a thing where he goes into communities and helps, I think, right, gives jobs to the people and teaches them, and that helps them protect the species. Obviously, if part of their way of life is making money fishing, they want to protect the species. But there's other things out there, right? The Amazon, I mean, you're talking about the forest. There's like huge sections of the forest being cut down for industrial purposes. Is that something you even see affects anything that you have going?
In our area, the lagoon that we fish, not so much, because it's away from the entrance of the main river. But there is a lot of petroleum exploitation there, and of course, as the industry grows, things happen. Pipes will burst. There can be a lot of contamination. Also, I mean, there's times that we've seen the river come all the way from the top completely black for days.
Black with oil?
Yes, with oil. So things like that happen. With that, there's a lot of fish killed. There's all kind of animals that get sick or die for that reason. And it affects the communities because, they can, most of these people in the indigenous communities, their water source is the river. That's where they feed their families. That's where they shower. That's where they wash the dishes. So when you pollute that, it can have a huge effect on people. So
that's a whole nother conversation, right? Talking about the conservation, what somebody listening now can do to help, right, protect these places. I guess, like you said, there's a national park. I know the government probably has its own issues, just like any government. But any recommendation there? If somebody wanted to learn more, I guess that's something you probably on your solo man probably don't have a ton of time to dig into the conservation stuff. But are there any groups out there that you would recommend if people wanted to learn more or help?
There's the University of San Francisco in Quito, which does a lot of studies there, and smaller organizations, even from the U.S. But your main person or group of people to take care of these is the locals, because now they see that this fish has been there for many years, is producing income for their families. So what better person will be to go to the government and ask for help?
Well, let's I wanted to touch on one thing before we start to think about getting out of here. I wanted to touch on the trout too, just briefly, but the COVID, I wanted to just hit on that just so everybody knows, because we're still, kind of coming out of COVID. The U.S. is pretty much, opened up. We've got vaccinations and stuff, but talk about that. If somebody was going either to the Galapagos or any of your other destinations, how are we looking down there? Can somebody start booking a flight right now?
Yeah, so the Galapagos is being completely 100% vaccinated right now. Ecuador Tourism is pushing Galapagos as one of the best, safest place to visit in the moment, just because the entire population is vaccinated. As long as you have your vaccine card from the States, you can basically just go into Ecuador, into Galapagos. So that makes the travel easier. I'm sure things change depending on how things are going, but in the moment, the situation is like that. In the jungle, I know some of the communities also have been vaccinated. Even the very remote communities have been vaccinated. So it's definitely one of the safest places to go probably right now.
And is the Galapagos trip, just take us there briefly for a second. What's the, I guess similar deal, you fly in and hop on a boat tour. Is that a lot more, is that an easier trip to put together?
That is a nicer, easier trip. We have couples coming there. We got people with their kids, with their families coming there. Usually the same way we land in Quito, we take about a half an hour flight to Guayaquil, which is another city closer to the coast. And from there, we take a plane that's about 3.5 hours to the San Cristobal Island. And that's where the biggest concentration of striped marlin is. So when we get there usually about 1 p.m. We have the entire afternoon to go visit the Galapagos turtles and some of the coasts of the jungle. The Galapagos has a smaller jungle like part where they have some freshwater lagoons. It's just an amazing place to go. So we use the first day to sightseeing a little bit. The next day, normally we fish 4 days, and we have a full day of, we call it a 360 tour, which goes around the entire island, stopping at different points. Sometimes we do some fishing, some deep sea fishing with jigging for different species that we cannot catch in the fly rod. Sometimes we snorkel with the sharks. We have some, 10, 15 feet hammerheads 4 feet away from you. It's a nerve-wracking, amazing experience for sure. So 4 days of fishing can definitely produce close to 100 fish. An average day of marlin fishing in Galapagos can be, we can raise somewhere about 25 to 35 fish almost every 15 minutes when you're in the boat. The biggest difference from Galapagos to other locations in Central America, North America, it can be our striped marlin are not small at all. I know Magdalena Bay has a huge amount of fish, but most of the fish are under 150 pounds. In Galapagos, I have never seen a 150-pound fish. Most of the fish are in the 200, 250, even 300 pounds or over. So we're talking a big marlin. Also got yellowfin tuna, bonitos, mahi-mahi. We got a little bit of everything. It's a truly amazing place to go fishing.
Yeah, so that's just another, again, like you mentioned, this is more of a tour, more of a, like you said, family even. So it sounds like you got this package, and then you've also got the trout trip. So, when I'm imagining people are coming down there, they're going for either Arapaima or Galapagos, or, are people going down there just to hit the trout, or is the trout like a secondary thing? How's that look? Why would somebody go down and hit trout versus, say, doing the other two things we've talked about?
We have a lot of people that come from the States to Quito, and they're doing sightseeing with their families, and they would like to do maybe a day or 2 days of trout fishing just to fish trout somewhere else. So most of the trout fishing that we do in Ecuador is more like a day or 2 day trips, unless we have an entire group coming down just for that. But I would say it's more like an additional thing to do while you fish for Arapaima or marlin and the Galapagos.
So that's it. So, and these are other things we can dig into more. Maybe if we have questions, I'll direct people to over to you to check in with you, or they can connect with me, and I'll do the same. And so you're in Chicago now. I'm just curious on the Chicago thing. How did you end up in Chicago as your now primary or off-season residence? Well, why Chicago? Why not any other place around the world?
First, I had some family here, so I decided to come here and go to school. And after that, I fell in love with fly fishing and became that my life. So I started pursuing the whole fishing industry. I started finding a little bit about Ecuador having trout, because in that time when I lived in Ecuador, I didn't even know we had trout fishing. I only fished in the ocean. And little by little started investigating in Ecuador and doing some smaller backpacking trips and things like that. We'll start finding these places that were loaded with trout, and I just thought, there's no one in Ecuador that does this. So there is a reason why we need to share this beautiful country with the rest of the world, and this is my way of doing it. So,
well, and that's why I'm hoping, like I said, I can help you, because this is. Like we were saying, I mean, the more people that know about this, it's actually counterintuitive, because it's better because people will likely help protect it, right? If you're able to get more people that love these trips and they do them every year, they're going to be asking the same questions like me, like how do we make sure there's no more oil spills going down the river? How do we protect the local community? How do we do a good job? Because that's going to help protect our fishing, right? It's almost a selfish thing, but it's a selfish thing in a good way, kind of, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, even when the pandemic started, the first reaction that we had was we start fishing the jungle right now until things get normal or somehow normal, just because the indigenous communities are very vulnerable. So if anything, if anybody gets COVID there, would have probably killed an entire group of people. So we just stopped doing it. And now we're getting back to that, since a lot of people are getting vaccinated, and even the visitors, of course.
Well, I feel like we've dug into it, Javier. Do you think anything else that we missed along the way here that you want to give that would help somebody if they're planning a trip down there?
I mean, I would like to say that Ecuador is a beautiful country. It is in the equator. You have the middle of the world monument, where you can definitely see some amazing things. We have fishing all over the coast, the jungle, and the Andes. So there's not many countries out there that you can fish species, many different species in the same place, in the same trip. So definitely check it out. It's an amazing fishery. It's a fishery that has never been touched.
Why is that, do you think? I mean, why has that, you think about these places that are really busy with lodges, multiple lodges. First question is yours the only lodge in the Amazon down there in Ecuador? And then the second question is, why aren't more companies down there trying to take advantage of this?
It is the only lodge in Ecuador that provides fishing. We also do bird watching in the same lodge. There's a lot of people that come from Europe to do that. But in my knowledge, there's no other company that does any type of fishing, professional fishing service, at least, at the level that we provide in Ecuador. In any of the areas, actually, Arapaima, trout fishing, or the Galapagos Islands.
And that's just because you think, I mean, you've obviously got a local connection, from the Quito thing. And it's just logistically, I mean, is it just a little bit challenging? I'd imagine with the local communities and the national park and stuff like that, that might be challenging for people to start.
Yeah, so like I said, Arapaima is a protected species, so you can't really fish it anywhere in the national parks. And there's not many communities that have Arapaima that they're outside of the national park. So I would say we're probably the only place that we can fish legally in Ecuador for Arapaima. I don't think of any other place that you can.
Well, this is, you've painted a very good picture. I just usually ask, sometimes I ask a couple questions on tips and tricks, but I think we've dug into it enough. If somebody's really serious about this, we can kind of follow up with you. In the next kind of year, I guess now that we're coming out of COVID, we've had this last year has been, for a lot of companies, I'm sure it's impacted your business. But now as you look out over the next year, what new is coming for you? What are you excited about?
We're ready to serve to our clients for next season. This year took a lot of rethinking and reassessing things to make sure that things like this don't happen again, and that we're prepared for it. Safety is a big concern for us, so we try to make sure that everybody is safe, and we definitely have the fishery to provide some amazing memories to the clients. So I think Ecuador should be one of your first choices for international travel.
That's it. All right, Javier. Well, it's EcuadorFlyFishingTours.com.
Yes, EcuadorFlyFishingTours.com. We also have Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, where you can see some of the images and videos that we provide.
Yeah, and so that's a great thing is Ecuador Fly Fishing. I think when I first found you, I think I just typed in that and it came up. You're on the top of everything, so that makes it easy for everybody. But Javier, thanks for taking the time today and sharing a little bit of insight on what you have going. It sounds like an amazing trip, comparable to probably many trips all around the world. So it sounds like I'm excited to hopefully maybe connect with you in the next couple of years, and I'd love to get down there and get some flies out to these fish.
Most definitely, Dave. It's a pleasure to be in your show, and thank you very much for the invitation.
So there you go. If you want to find the show notes, the links, everything else we have today, including the transcript for this, if you want to read the entire transcript as you go, there's a pretty cool feature there, wetflyswing.com/249. We've also got some links to the stuff we talked about and some videos. Everything's there. We're going to be upgrading the blog post a little bit this year, too, to keep adding some more information there. So check that out if you have a chance. Please subscribe to this show on your app of choice. I'm not sure if you're listening, what you're listening on right now, whether that's Overcast or Castbox or, Spotify, wherever you're at. Give a follow or a subscribe, whatever unit we're using these days. Follow or subscribe, and you'll get updated when that next show arrives in your inbox. That is all we have for you today. I want to thank you again for stopping by to listen today and support the show. And if you get a chance, reach out to Javier and just check in with him and let him know you caught this episode. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.